Candace, can that group over there, can you find your seats, please? Okay, great. Okay, I think everybody... Okay, we need, if you have, oh, there are lots of people with cups. Real cups. Okay. When you finished your coffee, are you finished your coffee? When you're finished your coffee, you're going to get traded. It's just the dishwasher takes a long time. So if you have a real cup, Dorothy will come and collect it. You don't have to go. I will be... We are now online. Okay, great. So as you just take your seats, please. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you quickly grabbing your coffee and your treat at the fellowship hour after church. Won't it be good when we're back in our downtown facility and we have space to do things? However, how blessed we are to have this North Shore location as well as the Aberdeen location. I am just now going to turn it over to Scott and welcome Scott, and we do appreciate you being here. And Scott will be talking to us about welcome.
Once again, good to be with all of you. We are going to be taking some time today to reflect together a little bit about not just this building project, but why it is that we made the decision together to say there has been a tragic event in our shared life. There's been a fire in our building. We ought to rebuild it. And it isn't obvious that that would be the only possible response. You could have responded differently and said, we don't need this actually. We don't need this building to do the work that we're going to do. But instead, you very clearly have made a decision to say, no, having that space will help us to do the work that God is calling us to do in Kamloops. And that's really what I want to explore, is this work that God is calling you to do in Kamloops. Because we want to be people who are grounded in who God is calling us to be. Right? We want to be people who can share our stories about who God is in our lives. We want to be people who can invite others into that shared story. Right? We want to talk about why, or we want to be able to talk about why what we do matters. And we want to do that in a way that's going to be life-giving for us and for those that we might invite to participate. For some of you, that's going to be rooted in this deep desire you have to share your experience of God through Jesus, just as Jesus calls you to do. For others of you, growing in your capacity to name the thing that God is calling this church to do and be, to name the thing that God is calling you to do and be in your life, that comes less naturally. Maybe it feels like a necessary response to concerns about attendance or volunteer capacity or finances. And when you feel that way, it's more difficult. Because we all know that that's probably not going to be the motivation that gets the people of Kamloops to say, I want to be a part of Kamloops United Church. Right? If you go to a friend and say, hey, would you like to be part of my church? We desperately need you to pay us for your free labor. They're not likely to be that interested in coming. Doesn't have a lot of uptake. And so we know there's some work to be done in our own hearts. We know that we need to remember the promise that goes all the way back to our ancestor Abraham, to whom God said, I will bless those who bless you, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Right? We are seeking to be a blessing to the community of Kamloops. That's who we're called to be as Kamloops United Church. We're called to be a blessing to others. And we want to lean into our excitement at what God is doing. And if we need to name the uncertainty or frustration or mixed motivations that we might have, we can remember the words of Jesus from the Gospel of Matthew when he says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I invite you to hear those words and to recognize that if talking about who you are as Kamloops United Church, if growing in your capacity to do that well is something you want to do because it's rooted in that motivation of fear or frustration or self-preservation, I am so glad that you can be here today for this conversation. Because we can recognize together that that is, in fact, a burden that you can lay down at the feet of Christ. And while you do so, nevertheless, recognize the gift that it has given you, and the gift of returning you to the risen Christ's call to make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to embrace all that Christ gives. Remembering the promise that Christ utters at the end of that call, "Be sure of this, I am with you always, every day, until the end of the age." I think we are here this afternoon because we have a desire to be able to articulate who we're called to be. We have a desire to articulate how God is showing up in our midst here at Kamloops United Church. We have a desire to have the building project that we're engaged in reflect who we're called to be in the city of Kamloops. We come here today to seek learning and to seek a hope-filled experience of the divine in the midst of a world and a church that isn't always as it should be. And you know that all too well, having had a fire in your sanctuary. I remember a similar experience that I had when I was the minister in Irma. It was 2021, Christmas Eve. I walked into the building that morning and our Christmas tree had decided to light itself on fire. There was soot everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. It was a harrowing experience. It ended up being that God showed up for me even on that day in some wonderful and strange ways. I called the funeral home and they let us use their chapel for our Christmas Eve service, which instead of being in person was now going to need to go back online. And we needed to find a piano because our piano certainly couldn't work from the church covered in soot as it was. So I broke into my friend's house in Wainwright, which he blessedly left unlocked, to steal the keyboard back from him that I had lent him so he could teach his daughter. And we used that for the Christmas Eve service in the funeral home, and we made it all work. Life isn't always as it should be. God is with us in the midst of it. You're in a moment now where life isn't totally as it should be. You are grieving some amount of loss. You are also looking forward and saying, in what way is God going to be with us in the midst of this? And so as we set this intention to notice how God is showing up for us in this season of the life of Kamloops United Church, I want to read a poem for you that speaks of both hardness and hope together, because that's so often how it shows up. This is Clint Smith's poem entitled "For the Hardest Days." Some evenings, after days when the world feels like it has poured out all its despair onto me, when I am awash with burdens that rests atop my body like a burlap of jostling shadows, I find a place to watch the sun set. I dig my feet into a soil that has rebirthed itself 1,000,000 times over. I listen to the sound of leaves as they decide whether or not it is time to descend from their branches. It is hard to describe the comfort one feels in sitting with something you trust will always be there, something you can count on to remain familiar when all else seems awry. How remarkable it is to know that so many have watched the same sun set before you. How the wind can carry pollen and drop it somewhere it has never been. How the leaves have always become the soil that then become the leaves again. How maybe we are not so different than the leaves. How maybe we are also always being reborn to be something more than we once were. How maybe that's what waking up each morning is. A reminder that we are born of the same atoms as every plant and bird and mountain and ocean around us. Friends, what I love about that poem is that it gives words to something that I feel deeply. Names the reality of the brokenness of the world, the brokenness of our own circumstances, and yet also the reality of our deep connectedness to all of creation, the reality of our call to be reborn, a call that you are living into in a very particular way right now, a call that I hear as a call to be reborn in Christ. You know, sometimes when we're talking about our faith in the United Church of Canada, we don't say quite enough. People want their spiritual community to matter, to make a difference in their lives. Sometimes the core message that we tell people in the United Church is that God loves them just as they are. And so they say, thank you. And they know quite correctly that God can love them just as they are on the couch, every bit as well as God can love them just as they are in church. And so they stay home. Right? We know we can't say any less. And sometimes people haven't heard the message that God loves them, and so we want to keep saying that. We want to keep saying that every person is beloved by the God who created them good, and we want to keep saying that over and over again because it's true. And sometimes, if people just hear that in isolation, they don't see what value being part of a community might have. That means we need to say a little more. And we need to name the truth that in our churches, you can be transformed by the love and grace of God. Now, it's generally true that we know more than we can put into words. That's true for people within the church, and it's true for people outside of the church. Right? I'm in the process of teaching my daughter how to play piano, and my relative lack of skill in playing the piano is actually pretty helpful. I remember what it's like to force my fingers to do the thing that I want them to do. And so when she says, I just can't play with both my hands at the same time, I go, I hear you. Like, it's hard. And I think the thing that's working for me is when, right? And we go into it. Now, at the same time, my son is learning how to ride a bike. He's 3. I know how to ride a bike a lot better than I know how to play the piano, but my ability to explain how is far worse. I just kind of know, right? And so I ask my son to get on his bike, and I say, just like give yourself a push and go. That you're done. That's it. Right? If I was going to give him better instructions, I'd need to practice. It takes practice to tell our stories well. It takes practice for us to do it as individuals. It takes practice for us to do it as church. Right? You are in this church very committed to making sure that there is a welcome to everyone who is in attendance. You are very sure to welcome not just those who are here, but also those who are online. And we want to also make sure that we're that intentional about offering a welcome to people who are here for the first time, to people who are here for the second or third time. We want to make sure that they know that they are welcome here. We want to find ways to name that, and we want to name that not just with our words, but also in the way that we set up this new sanctuary. And we want to make sure that when people arrive, they immediately can see that they are welcome. It sounds like it's a really easy thing to do, but it's actually quite difficult. It can be quite difficult because we have been trying to be people of welcome for a long, long time. And so I know that when I arrived at the door, I was immediately greeted by someone who said, "Welcome to church," before they knew who I was. And then I said, "Oh, I'm the preacher today." And they said, "Oh, delightful." That is a really, really good thing for us to be doing. Right? We want to make sure that we are friendly when people walk through the door. It is great that there is a time for people to grab a cup of coffee at the end of the service, because that is a really helpful way for us to gather around someone who's new and say, "You're welcome here. Have something to drink. Have something to eat." But we also want to make sure that our welcome extends beyond that. Right? Friendliness isn't just a handshake when you walk through the door and a cup of coffee when you get to the end and now we're done. Right? It's easy to tell ourselves that the church is friendly or welcoming. We smile when new people come and we make sure that they have some cookies after the service. Great. But there are other things that we can do. Have you ever thought about what it might be like to come here for the first time? Right? It might be worthwhile for you to come one Sunday and ask yourself questions like, what would make me want to come back? What might prevent me from coming back? What catches my eye if I'm here for the very first time? Is it obvious where I'm supposed to park? Do people stare at me if I come in? Is the piano in tune? Right? You might be surprised at what stands out to you if you think like you're in a space for the first time. It's also good to remember that having someone coming into the church for the first time is not that dissimilar from having someone come into your home for the first time. And that experience maybe feels a little bit more familiar for you. My wife is much better at this than I am. When we're having someone over for the first time, I have a task, and it's to get the playroom cleaned up. And I can say, they also have very young children. They know that things get messy. And my wife will say, it will not be messy when they arrive. Right? We want to make sure that the church is a clean space for people to walk into. When she's preparing something for them, like refreshments, she tries to make sure it's something that they will enjoy. Right? We want to make sure that the things that we have on offer for people will be something that helps them to have a good experience. When someone comes over to our house for the first time, she makes sure that they know where they can find a bathroom. She also makes sure to spend time with them. Right? If someone is coming to our house for the first time, she doesn't just say, "I really hope you enjoy our home. I've got some work to do in my pottery studio. We'll see you in a few hours." No, we want to accompany people who are with us for the first time. We want to be genuinely caring about what kind of experience they're having, and we want to engage them in good conversation. That can sound like a small thing, but sometimes we get so busy being neighborly with the people who are already our neighbors that we forget to be neighborly to the person who is here for the first time and doesn't know anybody. Sometimes we become so comfortable in the relationships we have, and we experience this community ourselves as such a friendly place that we can forget what the experience might be like for someone who is new. Generally speaking, when people are asked whether or not the church they attended was friendly, the thing they use to measure that is how many people actually took an interest in my life. Right? Did the person that was sitting next to me take an interest in my life? If I came with a friend, were they able to introduce me to someone, and did that person take an interest in who I am and what my story is? But when we do that well, then we set ourselves up to be people who are actually offering ourselves in hospitality to those who are in our midst. When I was having some conversations with Michael leading up to this day, we talked a little bit about sanctuary design. What is it like when someone walks in the door? Is there enough space for people to get in? Is it clear where they're supposed to go? Is there space for an usher or two to greet them? And if it seems appropriate for them to accompany someone, I know that when my children and I go to a service together, I am often doing events like this. And so when I'm not, it's often the case that my wife says, "Why don't you take the kids to church by yourself?" I can do that. I can do that. Many churches see a father with two very young children and say, that person might need help. So as I walk in, sometimes an usher will say, "Can I show you where the Sunday school room is?" And they'll walk me to the place that I'm supposed to go. "Can I introduce you to the person that helps to run the Sunday school?" And so then I'm immediately in conversation. Right? It begins with relationship. I've been to other places where that doesn't happen and had totally lovely experiences of church. But there is something very helpful about someone immediately taking a concern in your life and that first person that you meet helping you to get integrated into the life of that church in a good way. That doesn't always happen. Right? It's not always the case that people get the information that they need right away. It's not always the case that people meet the individuals within the church's life that would be optimal for them to meet right away. And so when it comes to how we're designing the new building, and when it comes to how we want to be together when we're in that new building, we want to make sure that we have newcomers in mind. If you don't, if you're just reactive to someone who comes, that can sometimes be enough, but not always. One of my colleagues in the growth department was telling a wonderful story about a couple who arrived with their two children. And they said, "What do you have for kids?" And the church said, "Actually, we haven't had kids in a long time. We don't really have anything right now, but I promise we'll have something next week." And that couple, a little disappointed on their first day, nevertheless came back the next week, and there was a lot for the kids to be doing. They had a Sunday school that was ready to be run. They had a little section in their sanctuary where kids could play with toys and books. That family suddenly recognized, we're really cared about here. They weren't quite ready for us, but once we showed up, they got ready in a hurry because they care about us. So do your best to prepare, and if you suddenly realize, oops, I'm not as well prepared as I thought I was, we're not as prepared as we thought we were, you can try to get prepared in a hurry. And that can make such a difference in the life of someone who has come for the first time. The other thing that is an important part of who we are as church is making sure that we are creating the conditions for people to have an experience of the divine. We don't always think of that as being part of creating a welcoming environment, but it really, really is. When people talk about the main reasons that they want to go to a church, when they talk about the main reasons that they want to stay in a particular church, they're going to talk about whether or not they're experiencing God in that space. They're going to talk about how God is present for them when they arrive. Friends, sometimes we have a harder time doing that in the United Church of Canada. We have a hard time naming the ways we expect God to be present in the lives of people. Many of us have been in church for a long time. We know how to worship. We know how to connect with the Spirit of God, and we rejoice when it happens in our lives. We sometimes struggle to tell our stories. You may think that people in your community know about your church, and on some level, they probably do. Right? There are a lot of people in Kamloops who don't attend the United Church who might know that there's a United Church that exists somewhere in here. They might know one or two things about you. Oh, they run like a feeding program or something. Right? But if the people who attend aren't practiced at sharing their stories, those who don't attend will be mostly ignorant about what happens here. I resigned as the minister for the Irma and Viking United Churches about a year ago. I was back. They don't currently have a minister in the community, and so they sometimes call on me to support them when there's a funeral in the community. I was back for a graveside service after I had resigned for about 9 months. And one of the people that attended the graveside service said, "That was so lovely. I would love to come hear you preach on Sunday." I've actually not been there for 9 months, right? So there wasn't someone that was talking to that person about what was going on in the life of the church. And so she didn't know. Even though it felt like to us, everyone in the community knows Scott's gone. We throw a whole do about it and everything. And she was someone who was clearly open to attending church. And if someone had invited her at some earlier moment, there's at least some chance that she would have been quite receptive. We need to be people who can talk about how God is showing up in this place. And so, for the next 6 minutes or so, I am going to invite you to find a partner or two. It doesn't need to be just one-on-one. And we're going to think about that question. How has God transformed your life through the ministry of Kamloops United Church? And I'll invite you to share with one another. Now, we're going to take 1 minute just in silence together to reflect on that, so you can really listen to one another as we are sharing. But once again, that question is, how has God transformed your life through the ministry of Kamloops United Church? Let's take a moment of silence. I'll ask the question one more time, and then you can find a partner to share with, preferably someone that doesn't live in your own house. Once again, the question is, how has God transformed your life through the ministry of Kamloops United Church? Did you find a partner? I'll set my timer for about 6 minutes. You have 6 minutes to share. Okay, friends, I will make my attempt to call you back together. Perhaps I'll try the clapping thing. So if you can hear me, try to clap back this rhythm. We'll see how it goes. That was fun. That was fun. That was fun. I hope you had some good conversation with each other about how this church has been a place where you have encountered God. How this church has been a place where God has made a difference in your life. And as you hold on to some of the things you said, we're going to jump back into conversation in just a moment. We're going to put just a slight twist on it because it speaks to what it is that we're inviting people into. Having a brand new space is an awesome opportunity for you to invite someone to church, right? We're going to be opening up our brand new building. I would love for you to come. Is a great start. But probably they won't just want to come because there's a brand new building there, right? There needs to be something deeper than a building that they might encounter. And so our question for you to have some conversation around this time will be, how do you hope God will transform the lives of those you invite to find spiritual belonging at Kamloops United Church? I'm just speaking about what you're hoping for, right? Usually, if I invite someone to a movie, I won't say, would you like to come to a movie? It's not that great. If I invite someone to come to the symphony, it's not to say, would you like to come to the symphony? You'll probably find it really boring. Right? No, I'm inviting someone to a movie because I think they'll enjoy it. I'll be able to say, I really like this director, or I really love that actor. If I'm inviting them to the symphony, it's because the way that the music touches my heart speaks to me, and I hope it'll speak to you too. When you are inviting someone to church, hopefully it's not because you think they might hate it, right? Hopefully you're inviting someone to church because you think it's going to be a life-giving experience for them. You're hoping that something is going to happen in their lives if they come. And so what is that? How do you hope God will transform the lives of those you invite to find spiritual belonging at Kamloops United Church? We'll take a few minutes to share, then we'll go get lunch. That sound good? So 1 minute of silence. I'll ask the question one more time. We'll have 6 minutes to share. We'll go get lunch. Does that sound good? Good. And so, how do you hope God will transform the lives of those you invite to find spiritual belonging at Kamloops United Church? Take a little bit of time to share with whoever it was you were sharing with previously.
They just take a long time to move and do things.
That's all right.
Yeah,
We can take a minute to.
I'm surprised I'm pleased so many people stayed. You know, so thank you. And thank you what you're saying. It's just perfect. You know, the session after is going to be interesting because this is where everybody has their own idea. What is going to look, and that's why we're doing it. You know, we send out every week I've been writing an update, right? Just from my lay perspective, you know, of the whole building project. Even still, like, did you not read this week's update? You know, like, did you see our newsletter? I sent it to. I mean, we do an extensive newsletter. Everything we can think of that's going on. Oh, we're selling these cookbooks. We're selling. One lady just over there. She was so upset. I didn't get to put my recipes in. Well, we announced 6 Sundays in a row. We had it in emails for 2 months to submit your things. We were out there saying, please, we need recipes. And we were there, and it just, it's communication, right? I'm like, oh, I now regret that I didn't. Okay,
Yeah. And so once again, I'll call you back in with my clapping rhythm. Hopefully, we'll see if it works. Kinda. Yeah. It was more effective the first time. That's to be expected. We are now ready for you to collect some lunch. And obviously, there is some lunch over here for the folks seated on this side. You'll have to get up, come and get it, come back to your seat. We'll do a little more chatting while we do. If you're seated on this side, there's a table right there. You can get up, come get it, come back to your seat. If you need a gluten-free meal, that's on that table right over there. So make sure no matter what side of the room you're seated on, you head over that direction to get that. Break. We will see how much time we have when you get back to your seats.
that was a really good workshop. I like it. Very, very to the point.
Red Deer. Red Deer, Alberta.
Is that close to Medicine Hat?
It is not particularly close to Medicine Hat. It's probably like 4.5 hours-ish north.
Oh, okay.
So it's north of Calgary.
Well, my son lives in Calgary, and I know they go to Medicine Hat quite often because his wife's parents live there. And I know Red Deer is in Alberta, but I wasn't
It is.
sure.
Yeah, halfway between Edmonton and Calgary.
Oh, okay. That's fairly north.
Yeah.
Are you just here for this weekend?
I am just here for this weekend. Yeah, I'm here for today and tomorrow.
Excuse me, Joy, one second. Could you tell people, yes, please take bottles of water.
Oh, sure.
We have a recycling basket. We want to get all the bottles back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I have to make one quick announcement. Oh, okay.
There is a liqueur commercial. I think it's either Portuguese or Spanish, but I love it.
Okay. Just a brief note to say, yes, please take a bottle of water. And when you do, put it in the spot that is going to be available for collecting them, which is right there. There we go. Thank you. So friends, check, 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 check. Nope. I will have a chance. Thank you. So friends, as we come back to our seats, I wanted to take a few more minutes to talk a little bit about our context. We've hopefully had some good conversations about how God has moved in our lives, some good conversations about how we're hopeful God might move in the lives of those we invite to participate. And we know that we're living in a rapidly changing context. We are rebuilding a church in a time when Christendom is dying. It's a trend that's accelerated rapidly, even in just the last 30 years. Sometimes we think going back to like the 1960s, and we say, wow, things have changed a lot since then. And that's true. Things have changed a lot since then. But even if we just go back to 1991, on the last census, 83% of people affirmatively said, I am a Christian. And 12% of people in Canada affirmatively said, I am a part of the United Church of Canada. Those are fairly substantial numbers. In 2021, just 53% of people said that they were Christian. Just 3% of people said that they were part of the United Church of Canada. So even in just the last 30 years, we've seen a fairly substantial shift. Now, on the other hand, a lot of people in British Columbia continue to find hope in the Christian story and in the United Church of Canada. Of the just over 5.3 million British Columbians in 2023, approximately 140,000 of them affirmatively selected belonging to the United Church of Canada on the last census. So when they were asked, what is your spiritual perspective? They could have just said Christian, or they could have said, oh, nothing, I'm not religiously affiliated. And they didn't say either of those things. They said, I'm part of the United Church of Canada. Now, this may not shock you, but we don't quite have 140,000 people worshiping in United Churches on Sunday mornings. Right? In fact, many of those 140,000 probably haven't attended a Sunday morning service in over a year. And there are a variety of reasons for that, but a lot of them boil down to a variation on, I'm just too busy. Right? For many in our society, busyness itself has become a virtue. When someone asks, how are you doing? We can sometimes respond, I'm busy, as though being busy is the same as being well, even though we know that isn't true. And sometimes being busy is a good thing. Sometimes being busy is a not so good thing. It is not the same as being well. Neither busyness nor slowing down represents what is good and right and true and beautiful. Instead, people long to have resonant experiences. And people long to have deeply meaningful experiences of something that is captivatingly good, to be connected to something full, to experience the love and grace of God in community. That idea is rooted in the work of a guy named Andrew Root. It's very easy for me to remember when I put it in that sentence. In a society that lifts up authenticity and busyness as some of its most important virtues, we are tempted not to make space for the inbreaking of the sacred, and yet sometimes it happens anyway. Right? Our awareness is drawn to something greater than ourselves, and we suddenly have that affecting and elusive experience of wholeness or peace that we recognize as deeply good. And so it is good and right for us to think together about when we have experienced those moments of resonance, right? Moments of affecting and elusive experiences of deep connection. Those moments when you climb to the top of a mountain and you suddenly recognize that this world is so much bigger than you are. That moment of awe. that moment that I have when I go to the Catholic church in town because we didn't happen to be in church on a Sunday and they have a Tuesday night service, so we go there instead. And my daughter says, "My favorite part is the holy water. Can I give you a blessing?" And we stop at the holy water worship station. She gets water and blesses me and then blesses her brother and then blesses me and then blesses her brother and blesses me and then blesses her brother. And yet somehow I don't want it to end. Right? Those moments where we have a deep experience of the divine. For some of you, it's easier to name the moments when that's happened for you outside of the context of worship. It's easier for you to name the moments when you've had a deep experience of the presence of God when you were doing the equivalent of climbing a mountain. Whether it's out hiking or out playing with your children or grandchildren or some other thing that you are doing out in the world. Those are great experiences, awesome experiences. I don't want to tear them down even in the slightest. They are worth cherishing. And yet, as church, one of the most profound acts of welcome that we can offer is creating the conditions for people to have a resonant experience of God here. And so the last question that I'm going to ask you to mull over as you eat your lunch with people, and then we'll come back and we'll maybe share a couple of stories. And maybe not everyone that wants to will have a chance to share, and that's okay. Because that's going to lead us into our next conversation about the space that we're making where those kinds of resonant experiences can happen. But with a partner, I encourage you to talk about a moment when you had a resonant experience of God in the context of corporate worship, worshiping with other people. Doesn't have to have been in Kamloops United Church, although it certainly could have been, and I hope you've had lots of them. But a moment when you've had a resonant experience of God's Spirit in the context of corporate worship, worshiping with other people. I'll give you a moment to chew and reflect, and then we'll have another few minutes of conversation, and I'll call you back, and this time I'll invite us to share a few of those experiences where we've had God present with us as we've worshiped together. So just take a moment here of quiet so that folks can reflect, and then I'll invite you to go back with your partner. And so, as you talk with the person or people that you have been in conversation with, can you name a moment when you've had a resonant experience of God in the context of corporate worship, worshiping alongside other people, whether here at Kamloops United Church or somewhere else? Go ahead. Okay, folks, we'll call you back one last time. We'll try the clapping. Last time for it, I think. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. And so we have time for just a couple of stories. Is there someone that would be willing to share? When is a moment? Yeah, go ahead. She's right there. Yeah.
Do we have a spare mic, Allie?
Hi, there it is. So I was saying that on Wednesday night when we had the benefit concert, I sang a song, an old Amy Grant song called El Shaddai, which means God Almighty. And I really felt like God was singing it with me, and I was singing it to him. I really felt that way.
So sometimes in song, we feel the presence of God with us when we're singing alongside others. Others, yeah.
One of the special moments every year is Christmas Eve, and then the lighting of a candle and singing Silent Night. It just hits home every year, it seems.
Yeah, there's something about that once a year shared ritual where we celebrate the coming of the light into the world. There's a hand over here.
I just want to mention something a little different. Scott, I don't know if you're aware that Kamloops United has a reputation in Kamloops. We have a history. We are known for many, many things, to be, first of all, inclusive. Our weekly Sunday pit stop meals where we serve 200 people, and so on, many, many. So we don't have to convince anyone to join our community, our family, because we are well known.
It can sometimes feel that way. I bet you'd be surprised that a number of people might know that about you, but don't know what your life of worship is like. And that's why we're chatting about worship life specifically. Yeah, go ahead.
So I really had to think deeply, which is surprising because I'm 78 and most of my life I've gone to church, and that really surprised me. So thank you for having me think of that. And then it struck me, there was a Christmas Eve several years ago where the choir with Rachel Caspioni at the front of it came into the church, and the church was just filled with her heavenly voice. And it was a moment and so inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've heard moments of service. We've heard moments of song. We've heard moments of shared ritual. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not going to go into detail, but when my husband passed away in hospice, Michael was there. And anyway, he said, we have to open a window to let Norm's soul leave. So then I understood. We're here just for, our bodies are our bodies, but our soul goes into the heavens, and it made me feel very, very good. I appreciate Michael very much.
Yeah, sometimes those moments of shared worship, they don't always happen here. They can happen in other spaces when we have that sense of deep connection in the most important moments of our lives. My encouragement to you, as you think about the ways that you might invite someone into your shared life, particularly as you move into a new space, is when you're making that invitation to be able to name this kind of moment in it. Would you like to come to church with me? It's a place where when we share with one another in song, I feel God deeply in my heart. That's more impactful, no matter how good your cookies are, than, would you like to come to church? We have cookies after the service, right? We want to welcome people into the possibility of an experience of the divine. And it is so good when you're able to speak about it being your experience of the divine. And so as we hold those experiences that we have had, and as we look forward to a new space where we're going to be conscious about creating the conditions for that to happen in a good way, I will pray and we will transition. God, we give you thanks. We give you thanks for your presence in our midst today. We give you thanks that you are with us always. Help us to notice. Help us to notice you at work. Help us to grow in our ability to name it for ourselves, for each other, and for the community that we're called to serve. Amen.
Don't go anywhere. Don't go. Okay, you want to say thank you. Scott, we certainly do want to thank you for just leading us through this, this wonderful exercise and sort of setting some of the foundations for where we're going to go into the future. And we just really appreciate you taking this time, especially in December with a young family. We know how busy life can be and how you do the traveling. So we do want to, just as a way of saying thank you, give you a cook. We know your wife apparently does the cooking.
I do some.
But let me tell you, I got to see some of the recipes in this book, and they are absolutely fabulous. So thank you very much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Okay. So we're going to transition now. Actually, I want to share my moment. Can I share my moment? I mean,